What's up, y'all? This is Hammer here again, back with another video. And today I'm going to be talking about black women, but specifically, I'm going to be talking about black women's reaction to the recent U.S. presidential election, in which Donald Trump, of course, was elected the next U.S. president. The reason I want to talk about this is because I specifically want to focus on the manner in which black women react to elections. So it's not just about me talking about the reaction to U.S. presidential election. It's the manner in which. And when you look at it, black women were having mental breakdowns. They were crying. They were, weeping and sobbing. And if you really look at it, you know, a lot of the sadness and anger they had wasn't even about quote unquote Trump, being elected as the next U.S. president. A lot of the reaction, or the anger within the reaction to Trump winning the presidency, a lot of that anger and frustration within black women's reaction was really in regards to specific demographics and how those demographics voted. So, for example, if you look at white women, right, a majority of white women voted for Donald Trump. I believe it's 50%, right? So, if you got about 53% of white women voting for Donald Trump, you got about what, 60% of white men. You got about 55% of I think Hispanic men, and maybe almost 40% of Hispanic women, and I think every other race outside of black folks was about 50% who voted for Trump, right? Black people are actually the only group that in black people are the only group in which the overwhelming majority of them voted for Kamala Harris. Most other groups were just not close to those numbers, right? And so when black women look at the demographics, right, in which you have white women who essentially, you know, stabbed them in the back and voted for Trump, but you also have these other people of color who turned on them. That's really what it was. So me talking about black women and specifically the reaction, what I'm really trying to get at is the way in which they reacted, the anger, and what is causing that anger. And what I've come to realize is that the anger and the frustration, behind the sort of reaction towards Trump's presidency, a lot of it has more to do with how specific demographics voted than even how Trump voted. Because I feel like, look, it's one thing if Donald Trump became president, but I don't know, Hispanics, Asians, other groups still voted for Kamala Harris, and maybe it was half and half, or even I guess some minority of white women who voted for Trump. Double different. So that's one thing. But I think the difference is that he won, but it was also that he didn't just win, but you had a majority of white women. You had even other minority groups, like I guess people of color groups, that flipped on his side as well too, specifically Hispanics, right? And of course, the demographic that is causing the most pain to black women is the one about white women, right? Look, the Hispanic thing, obviously I think that hurts them a lot because, there was this Black and Brown Coalition. Some of these other groups hurt them a lot because there was this thing about people of color coalition. But I think the specific demographic and how they voted for Trump, that's really, I think, caused so much anger and pain when it comes to black women's, I guess you could say, very vicious reaction to Trump winning. The demographic, I think, that has really caused a lot of that is white women. And I believe the reason is because white women and them, at 50%, right, 53% voting for Donald Trump. The reason why I think that specifically caused so much pain for black women is because of how much white women have just been gassing them up, right? Gassing them up. Look, black men have been trying to tell black women for a very, 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 very long time that, hey, look, um, if you want to go over there and hold hands and make all kinds of coalitions with Becky, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. But understand that at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, it's always going to be race first. And if you think that white women specifically are going to trade their privilege, their resources to do girlhood and femalehood with you, you out your fucking mind. All right. So black men been telling this. Okay. But I think for a while, I think a lot of black women genuinely believe that. I think a lot of it's because I think a lot of black women, them chasing feminism and making coalitions with white women, yeah, part of it was about independence, but I think a lot of it was about escaping blackness. It was about that, okay, since I can't deal with the social pressures and the burdens of blackness, I'll just focus on my gender. So when you got white women who've been, gassing black women up, girl power this, girl power that. Now here's the thing: there were already signs there were already signs of white women, not being honest with black women, right? When you look, for example, the majority of affirmative action was going to white women, right? And if you think about it, white women really only started turning on affirmative action when when people started noticing that, hey, affirmative action is not really benefiting real minorities like blacks or other groups. It's actually white women, right? And when you have black women and women of color really start saying, hey, we gotta start, really pushing to make sure more and more of these resources, more affirmation is going to, the actual, minority groups. All of a sudden, right, white women said, nope, that's woke, that's ZI, that's all that stuff, that's racist, and they went, back to black, held hands, and white women started working with them to dismantle affirmative action. Of course, I would make the argument that, since affirmative action was put in place, there was always, white resistance, but I think that this sort of really move that white women have done, in which they've really, really, really went with the men against affirmative action, that really only sort of happened when we're starting to see too many, I guess, minorities, particularly women of color, really saying, hey, y'all can't just be hogging up the plate. Y'all can be having all the affirmative action. You gotta share, right? And of course, when it comes to white females, well, if they can't take all the plate, then they'll just throw the plate out the window. Right. Well, look, if we can't benefit from affirmative action, then if white women can't be the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action, then they'll just throw affirmative action away, and they started really riding with them with that. So, what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say here is that if you really look at it, they have always been in it for themselves. I have always said that if you actually pay attention to white women and all of these other I guess you could say outcasts within the white community. I'm not gonna dive into it. I'll just say that when you got, for example, the white LGBT, white women, I guess you could say other fringe groups within the white community, what you typically see is that the similarity between these groups is that, they have no intention. Like, all of the outcast groups, I guess the groups that, or I guess, are not at the top within the white community, the only reason why they, quote unquote, will go out here and fight the system is not because of fight against white supremacy. The only issue they have is that their outcast status within the white community prevents them from being able to really tap into whiteness. So white women, they're not trying to get rid of white supremacy. Their only beef is that sex prevents them from being able to fully participate in white supremacy like white men. When it comes to white LGBT, they don't have a problem with white supremacy. The only issue is that, their sexuality prevents them from fully able to participate in whiteness. So when you understand this, then you understand that when all these groups, while LGBT, and specifically white women, go and make these coalition minorities, it's not because they're trying to get rid of white privilege, quote unquote. A lot of it is because they simply are trying to quote unquote rise up the totem pole within the actual white power structure, right? They are trying to sort of reform white supremacy so that certain aspects of their identity don't prevent them from being able to fully access whiteness. Me being a female should not prevent me as a white woman to fully be able to access whiteness. Me being a quote-unquote gay white dude should not prevent me from fully able to access whiteness. That's the reason why once that gets resolved and once they're fully able to situate themselves and fully able to tap into whiteness, all of that racial justice, all that stuff goes on the window. So so it shouldn't be a surprise to black women that once white women were able to remove sex as being a real, inhibitor from them being able to fully partake into white supremacy like white men, and once they were able to kind of use sex to really extract a lot of the affirmative action, a lot of the resources that was supposed to go to black people, and instead it took those resources and sort of gave it to themselves and the white community through sex. It's not a surprise that once all those things were done, it said, okay, we don't need you no more, black women. We don't need you no more minorities, specifically, now minorities. That shouldn't be a surprise to you. And what makes, I think, black women's reaction so sad is that I keep hearing them saying, well, they're voting against their interests. No, they're actually voting for their interests. Whiteness is their interest. Look, black women, you can't on one hand complain about the white privilege that white women have and then be surprised when they defend that privilege. Listen to what I just said. You can't on one hand complain about the white privilege that quote unquote white women have and then complain about that privilege. That makes no sense. Of course they're going to vote for whiteness because that is in their interest. Look, let me break this down to you, right? In this world, it is always going to be race over gender. And I tell this to black women all the time, okay? I've made many videos addressing black men, other black men specifically, and I guess, covering other areas in the black community. But I feel like this video is really going to tilt towards black women. Now, of course, I'm going to be covering other areas as well too in regards to the election. But black women, look, in this world, right, power is fundamentally based on your group first. Group first. I'll give you guys a good example, right? The world that we live in is quite simple, right? The world we live in is quite simple. It is essentially based on this very, very simple truth. Men around the world, groups of men around the world, are going to compete with each other for power. And whichever male group succeeds, they get all the spoils of being the victor. And the women and children are elevated with them. Let me say it again. The women and children are elevated with them. Meaning whatever privilege, power, resource the women have is predicated directly on where the men are. So I'll give you a good example. Because white men went out here and quote-unquote conquer and dominate the world, they rose to the top of the hierarchy. As they rose to the top, they take white women and white children with them. So white women and white children get to be at the top with white men because white men are at the top. They get to enjoy all the benefits and resources of being at the top because white men are at the top. Meaning, if white men go from being at the top to being at the bottom, white women go to be essentially end up at the bottom too. Because them being at the top and getting all the resources was not predicated on them. It was always predicated on the men being at the top. I'll give you an even better example, right? Let's say you have a black dude, right? A black guy. And he's married to a black woman, right? Black kids. The man, he's making, $50K a year. As long as he's making that $50K a year, her lifestyle, that black woman's lifestyle is going to be tight. Now, she can go out here and make her own money and so that's great, but let's be honest here. We already know this. Most women, for the most part, when they get with a dude, they want the guy to pay most of the bills and not go 50-50, right? And most chicks are not going to get with dudes who make most chicks are not going to get with dudes who make less money than them. So for the most part, if she's with a dude who's making 50-50, that's going to be her lifestyle, right? That's going to be her lifestyle for the most part. She go out here and work? That's fine. But for the most part, she is her lifestyle is going to be tied to that dude. Because even if he's making 50K, she's going to want him to carry most of the financial burden, right? She is never going to want to be in a situation where she's paying half. She's never going to a situation where he's making less than her, right? So really, when a man and woman gets together, the lifestyle a lot of time is really predicated on the man, right? Particularly because we know that women, for the most part, are very much resistant to when it comes to 50-50 and paying for it. So we know that. So if we have a black man making 50K with a black woman, right? Maybe she contributes here and there. She has her own part-time job, whatever. But for the most part, he's a breadwinner, right? The lifestyle of that family is going to be predicated on that 50K. Now, if that black man goes from making 50K to all of a sudden now he's a billionaire, as he is elevated in lifestyle, that woman, his wife, is going to be elevated with him too. So the same way he is now going to be living a quote-unquote billion-dollar lifestyle, because she is his wife and because she's attached to him, she instantly is now going to be living a billion-dollar lifestyle. Think of it that way when it comes to groups, except it's permanent, right? You got a group of men and their female counterpart is permanent. The status, privilege, everything those women get, like their entire existence is predicated on where their men are. So no, black women, them actually voting for whiteness, voting with the men, is in their interest, because they understand the only reason why they're quote-unquote at the top is because their men are at the top. The reason they're above you, black women, is because their men are above you. The moment their men fall, they fall with them too. And the crazy part is, you remind them every fucking day how much you envy the position. Like, you can tell Becky how much you envy her position and then tell her to throw her men on the bus and sacrifice her position. That makes no sense. Right? And so I just hope that black women, this was a wake-up call to black women in terms of the fact that all of this whole rhetoric and just dumb nonsense about how we're going to go out here and hold hands with Becky and quote-unquote put gender over race. I just hope that the wake-up call from this election, or the reality check, first of all, y'all should have been figured this out. I don't know why it took it this long, but nevertheless, I just hope that the wake-up call, the reality check, forces y'all to finally, I just hope that the wake-up call and the reality check of white women showing you once again that it's race first is going to force you guys to come back down to reality. I have told black women this various times. You will never rise above black men. Oh, let me say it again. You will never rise above black men. And I'm not saying that in a threatening form. What I'm saying that is that if you understand what I just said in terms of how women, their status, their privilege is tied, everything they get is based on where the men are at. That means that anything you do outside of elevating your man is going to be with time. It's going to be with time. And this is the reason why, personally, I feel like the only reason why I think a lot of black women, bought into this narrative of girl power and we're going to hold hands with Becky, is because I feel like a lot of black women, they believe that, if we just find a way to cut ourselves from black men, then we can go over here and hold hands with Becky and quote unquote, that's how we can elevate our status. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. You can run all you want to. You always be tied to your men, and your status, your position is based on where your men are. And I personally believe that for a lot of black women, that's where the resentment comes from. I think a lot of black women, a lot of black feminists, I think a lot of y'all already know. I think a lot of y'all deep down already know that fundamentally, the only way you will ever be in the position that white women are at is if black men end up in the position that white men are at. And because y'all know that your status and what you get is not really under your control and it's entirely based on your men, I think that's the reason why I think y'all resent black men so much, because you blame them for where you are. Which, I can understand that. But my thing is, if you are then serious about elevating your position, then wouldn't it make sense to work with your men? Wouldn't it make sense to empower your boys, invest in your boys? I'm just trying to talk to all the black females and feminists I've been hearing online and how they've been having a heart attack over this election. If you understand that basic truth, that quote unquote, your status, your position as a woman is based on where your men are, wouldn't it make sense then to essentially ensure that your boys are producers, right? Or quote unquote out here building. You, instead of investing money in girl power, you invest in the world, because okay, the more and more black men rise, the more and more you rise. Now, of course, I've asked myself this question, right? And I said, okay, maybe it's the reason why a lot of black women may be against that is because, quote unquote, they want to have independence, they want to be powerful, and I think there's some truth to that. But I think, in my opinion, and I guess some black females can comment if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of y'all don't trust black men. I think that a lot of black men believe that your behavior, the reason why y'all are so resistant to focusing more on the boys and the girls, all that stuff. A lot of black dudes believe it was because y'all, girl power, that kind of stuff. I think that's part of it, but I think a lot of it is that a lot of black women don't trust black men. I think a lot of black women, and ladies, keep it real. Y'all can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of y'all fear that if black women, I think a lot of black women fear that if black men were to be elevated in such a manner, that a lot of them will choose non-black women. Let me say it again. I think a lot of black women, the reason why a lot of y'all may be so resistant to black male leadership, black male patriarchy, black male, all that kind of stuff, right? Part of it may be because of girl power, and I get that, but I think a lot of it is that a lot of y'all genuinely believe you have this intrinsic fear that the moment black men really elevate, get papered up, they will cross over the fence and get with non-black women. And I think this also explains why I think a lot of black women have the visceral reaction they do when they see, black men, that specifically, black men who have money dating out, right? It's a stereotype that whenever black men get money dated out, right? Which, of course, the numbers should have, of course, most black men deal with black women, but still. And I could understand where that comes from, right? Is that, hey, if all of these niggas, if all these black dudes who are at the bottom right now, if they're at the bottom right now and they're already chasing Mei Ling, Becky, Maria, what the fuck are these black men gonna do if they were to be in the position that white men are in? Are they gonna choose us black women, or are they gonna run over to the other side? I think a lot of it is that. And to that, I don't blame black women for feeling that way because of how we see, dudes out here pedalizing white women, non-black women, and I've called them dudes for doing that, right? But what I will reassure black women is that, hey, at the end of the day, that's a minority. The vast majority of black men will, the same way they are right now sticking with black women, they will stick with black women in that position, right? So if that's something that a lot of y'all are really worried about, y'all gotta let go. Gotta let go. But to sort of finish on this specific topic, look, black women, okay? The fact that 53% of white women went out here and voted for Trump should not be having y'all having a heart attack. Okay? They didn't vote against their interests, they voted for their interests. Okay? They didn't vote against other groups of women. They voted for their own group. And y'all need to understand that just because you throw your men under the bus doesn't mean they will do that. In fact, they understand that even with all the feminists, even with all the white, even with all the, oh, down with the white pig, even with all that rhetoric, they all understand that at the end of the day, the only thing that separates Becky understands the only thing that separates her from you as a black woman is that whiteness. And she knows that whiteness can only be maintained by that white man. And if that white man falls, that whiteness collapses. The whiteness will collapse, and she will be right there equal to you. Now, let me ask you a question, black woman. Do you honestly believe that Becky wants to be equal to you? Like, do you genuinely believe that when you're holding hands with Becky, like Becky genuinely wants to be in a situation where you are equal to her? Or do you think she sees you as a tool she can use to push, whatever she's trying to push until she needs you no more? Which is the reason why, for example, white women who were the biggest beneficiary of affirmative action and all this, minority programs, they're now working with the men to push that away. Why? Because the moment the conversation became, hey, too many white women are benefiting from this, too many white folks, particularly white women are benefiting from this, we got to start really shifting more and more that towards the initial, in other words, as long as white women were the biggest beneficiaries of all these quote unquote minority programs, diversity programs, affirmative action, all that kind of stuff, they were cool with that. Even though you had resistance from white folks, they were cool with that. It's only when you start to see, minorities, black women, non-white people really say, hey, actually, a majority of all of these goodies that were made for people of color, or I guess minority groups or black women, are going to white women, and we got to stop that. So it's only when there was a real threat that a lot of the quote-unquote goodies that, white women were getting through these affirmative action programs, diversity programs, minority programs, that when you had the threat that many of those goodies may actually start going to the people it was intended for, which is actual minorities, actual black women, actual people of color, when that threat came that, all of them goodies and resources may actually be redirected from white women towards actual real minorities and black women and people who are not white, they said, okay, well, time's up. They work with the men to essentially pull the rug and really push to get all that stuff terminated. So it was completely opportunistic. So you saw white women do this, but somehow you think that quote unquote, if they had to make a choice between holding hands with you compared to quote unquote with the men on whiteness, they somehow go into choose girl power and girl solidarity over whiteness. At the end of the day, like I've already said, let's be honest here. What y'all really want is you guys want the power and privilege that white women have. And what I'm going to tell y'all is the only way you are going to achieve it, the only way you're truly going to get that is through your men. Anything outside of black men being empowered and specifically being ahead of you, because once again, for black men to elevate you, they have to be ahead of you. Anything outside of your men being empowered, right, is not nothing outside of your men being empowered is going to lead to you even remotely being equal to a white woman in regards to power and resources and status. That's not going to happen. So if y'all are really mad and angry and crying about, white women choosing whiteness and white women having their privilege, all that kind of stuff, then what you got to do is work with your men, help your men being empowered so that they can elevate you the same way white men elevate white women. That's simple. So I'll leave it at that. But going to the next topic, the next thing I want to talk about specifically is how, people of color and I guess you could say non-white voters came out here and went for Trump. Because look, it wasn't just that you had white women, who came out, which got black women mad, but another, I guess, demographic that really got black women mad specifically I was even black people mad, was how we saw how people of color, Hispanic specifically, went for Trump, right? 55% of Latino men voted for Trump. I think it was what, almost 40% of Latino women. And then when you look at every other, I think, people of color group was what, almost half, almost 50% who voted for Trump. So in other words, the only group that overwhelmingly voted for Kamala Harris was black folks. So if we look at these other quote unquote people of color groups. Now, once again, guys, right? When I say people of color, I'm referring to people who are non-white and non-black. So they're neither white or neither black. So they're Latino, Hispanic, all that stuff, right? So, because for me, I don't include black people and people of color. I say black and people of color. So just want to clarify that, right? So if we look at quote unquote the people of color and how a lot of them shifted towards Trump during the recent election, the question then becomes, why would they do this, right? Why would Latinos go out here and vote for Trump despite all of his rhetoric about mass deportation? Why would Asians, a lot of them go out and vote for Trump despite his rhetoric about China and about China, all that kind of stuff? Why would they do that? Well, the answer is very clear. I have already talked at length about, and for those who may be wondering, the reason why I specifically talk about how Trump talking about China affects Asian Americans, because you have to understand that in the United States, when people look at Asian Americans, especially white folks, they don't really differentiate because they view them all the same. So when Donald Trump is making all this rhetoric about Chinese threat, all that kind of stuff, right, that negatively impacts negatively impacts Asian American, because a lot of the hostility that whites, a lot of them will have towards China or Chinese people, that also gets directed towards just ordinary Asian-looking people who may not even be Chinese, right? So that's why I said his rhetoric about China and that kind of stuff may hurt also Asian Americans, because white folks, a lot of them may just view all of them as similar. They see an Asian looking dude walking on the street. The guy's Korean. It don't matter to them. He looks Asian, and they attack him because you look like a Chinese man, and that inferior to me, and as a white guy, put hands on you, and no to the CCP. So that's why I want to bring that up, because we obviously know that Trump speaking about mass deportation, that kind of stuff, and it's detrimental to Hispanics, because so many Latinos are here illegally. I would say almost all of them are immigrants here, because a lot of them came from South America. Right, so obviously him talking about mass deportation and all that stuff is very detrimental to Latinos, who are very large, in which a very large percentage of them are, I guess you could say, recent immigrants, right? Then you look at Asians, in which him talking about China and the Chinese takeover, all that kind of stuff, could also hurt them, because a lot of folks will just see an ordinary Asian-looking person and attack them and be prejudiced towards them because of all of the rhetoric about China, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't matter if that person is Chinese or not. If they just look Asian, they'll catch the heat. So that's just to kind of explain break down what I was trying to say. But the point is, why is it that Donald Trump can talk about massive deportation when it comes to Latinos? China, the threat of China. When it comes to, in other words, why is it that Trump talking about mass deportation and illegal immigration, why didn't those things deter Latino voters? And also, why is it that Trump talking about China and the Chinese virus and how those things may potentially negatively impact Asian Americans? Why didn't those things also dissuade a lot of Asian Americans from voting for Trump, right? As well as other minority groups that may have gone out there and voted for Trump despite all of his all of his just crazy rhetoric specifically towards minorities. I believe the only reason why all of these groups will overlook all of the just crazy stuff Trump says, specifically about minorities, and still vote for him is because a lot of these groups are chasing aspirational whiteness. Look, I have talked at length, and I mean at length, about how a lot of these groups, they already had deep anti-blackness, right? But a lot of these groups, when they look out around the world, right, people of, I would say non-white, non-black, when you look at a lot of these quote unquote, people of color, people of color groups, right, whether it's Latinos, Asian, Arabs, all that stuff, right? When these people look around the world, they see white people at the top and black people at the bottom. And so with that mindset, naturally, they're naturally going to gravitate towards whiteness. And by the way, this is the reason why even as a black person, if you go to Asia, these non-black countries, it's the same thing, right? A white person can show up there and they will give them the best respect. They'll roll out the red carpet. You show up as a black person, you get all kinds of just racial abuse. And so to think that Hispanics who come, Latinos who come from countries in which white folks are viewed as being the top of the hierarchy, and black people are viewed as being the bottom, right? To think that folks like that will come into this country and sort of this idea of worshiping whiteness is not going to eventually manifest, that's dumb. And then when you look at these other groups like Asian, others around the world, those groups already have a tendency of looking up towards white folks. And so what I'm trying to say is that once you understand that all of these people of color groups around the world, from Latinos to Arabs to Asians to Middle Easters, all that kind of stuff, right? All of these people view white folks as being at the top of the hierarchy, and so they simultaneously chase whiteness because they want to be associated with what they see as being at the top of the hierarchy, which is whiteness, right? So the idea that those folks, when they come to America, they won't try to also pursue whiteness here is insane. Obviously, a Hispanic person in South America who was literally being told by the culture to better the race, muaraza, and quote unquote, progress towards whiteness. Obviously, if they come here to America, they're also going to have an affinity and a sort of a natural instinct to chase whiteness. Same thing when it comes to these other groups in Asia or in the Middle East. So what I'm saying here is that when you look at how a lot of these people of color groups voted for Donald Trump, it shouldn't be surprising. When you look at how a lot of these people of color groups voted for Donald Trump, despite all of the just racist stuff Trump said about these groups and just how detrimental his policies will be to these groups, the reason why it's not surprising why these groups will overlook all of that and still vote Trump is because, they're chasing aspirational whiteness. And when you understand that all around the world, all of these people of color groups, from Latinos to Asians, Arabs, all of these groups view white people as a hierarchy, actually, chase whiteness because they want to be associated with what is at the top of the hierarchy, which is whiteness. Well, once you understand that, it shouldn't be a surprise that these groups, when they come to America, they're going to also continue their pursuit of whiteness, right? Now, folks will say, okay, but Hammer, if we look at a lot of these minority groups, whether it's, for example, if we look at Latinos, for example, right, a lot of these minority groups, they've been voting Democrat, right, for some time now, specifically Latinos. So why now? Why did all of these groups all of a sudden now break? Look, I will say it's timing. I will say that for a lot of these people of color groups, I think that, I think when they came to America, did they, the same way they were chasing whiteness, worshiping whiteness in the home countries, that mentality was still there when they came here. But I think that for a lot of them, the reason they went towards the left is because the left was offering more. Right? Look, we already know how a lot of these, people of color groups, they receive more from Democrats than black folks. So a lot of it was, hey, we'll just quote unquote be on the left because they're offering more. And once they felt situated and comfortable enough, quote unquote, like, okay, we got enough, we're good, we're situated, I'll give you for example, right? There has already been this sort of, stereotype, or I guess this trend, in which you will have the Latinos who will come to America, and when they first get here, they'll lean towards the left, all that kind of stuff, right? And even once they get their papers and once they get their legal documents and the citizenship, they're still leaning towards left, right? But once they find themselves in a position where they feel their economic is strong, they own homes, they're in a good position, then they'll flip right, right? So this trend, this pattern is not new. And so what I'm saying here is that a lot of these people of color groups, right, they already had the mentality of chasing whiteness because in their home countries, they're already doing that. They're already, they were already looking up and quote unquote worshiping whiteness in their home countries. And so when they came here, they simply brought that with them. And all they did was simply lean towards the left to get as much as they could. And then once they felt they were in a good position, they decided to, quote unquote, chase aspirational whiteness. And it just so happened that this election was the time that it happened. It was time. It was a time. Now, of course, is it going to work? No, it's going to backfire, because what they don't understand is Donald Trump essentially ran on a white identity politics, right? Which, once again, did immigration, did the economics, did all those things, also matter? Yes. But when you look specifically at how white folks came out for Trump, a lot of white folks went out there and voted for Trump because they resonated with his white identity politics. Now, did they also resonate with immigration economics? Yes, but a lot of it was that. And also, a lot of these people of color groups, they also in many ways resonated with his white identity politics because, once again, that taps into their idea of aspirational whiteness, which is like, okay, we can't be fully white, but we can at least be white adjacent. And when you understand that in the home countries, they already had the mentality of chasing whiteness, it shouldn't be a surprise that once they came here and they found themselves in a strong enough position, and they sort of manifested that mentality. Now, of course, they're going to work? No, because what's going to happen is, now that Trump is in office, he's going to remind them, yeah, you're not white. And all of that white agency stuff, that's not going to go so far. Look, Trump right now is making it very clear that, quote unquote, he's serious about all of that mass deportation stuff. He's serious about going after the folks, right? Trump and his administration is serious about going after DI. Trump, you're seeing already, they're making it very clear that their agenda is really going to be centered on white grievances. Right, focusing on specifically, white, the sort of white working class, specifically, getting rid of woke, getting rid of all these, quote unquote anti-white diversity programs, all that kind of stuff. And by the way, the people who are, in my opinion, really gonna be hurt by this are gonna be the people of color, because why? Is the same thing that happened with affirmative action. A lot of Asians thought, they bought into these white supremacist narratives that, black folks are just getting in there because of black. Even if you look at it, black people are actually underrepresented, right, in these Ivy League schools, and Asians are overrepresented. And really what it was that, a lot of Asians, y'all were actually benefiting more from affirmative action than even black folks. Because Asian is not just, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. Asian also includes, folks from Southeast Asia. It also includes Myanmar. It also includes Philippines. It includes other countries that are not pale skin Asians. And so what they fail to understand, okay, there are a lot of Asians who are lower income that will benefit from that action, right? So, but because you bought so much in these white supremacist narratives, bought so much in this, this whole idea of the model minority myth, that you model minority myth, you totally ignored all of the lower income Asians that would benefit from that. Which is the reason why was that when the affirmative action, was dropped, who got hit the most was Asians. Because not only were they benefiting the most from affirmative action, not only were they benefiting more from affirmative action than even black folks, because once again, we already know that almost every other group was benefiting more from affirmative action than black people, even Asians, right? Right, even Asians. So when affirmative action got quote unquote squashed, right? Asians ironically backfired, because why? We found that, hey, a lot of y'all benefit from affirmative action too. In fact, y'all probably benefit from a lot of you Asians were probably benefiting from affirmative action even more than black people were. Which is the reason why a lot of the lower income Asians that would have gotten in affirmative action didn't get in. So that hit your numbers. Then on top of that, they got rid of affirmative action, but they kept legacy admissions. And we know the folks who predominantly benefit from legacy admissions are white kids. So essentially what happened is that by knocking out affirmative action, what we found out is that Asians actually benefit more from affirmative action than quote unquote black people, right? Because there were a lot of lower income Asians that were sort of getting in there from action, right? They got hit, and that reduced your number. And then on top of that, right, the legacy students, right, that was kept in place, and all of the extra seats. All of the seats that would have gone towards affirmative action, a lot of those seats went towards white legacy students. A lot of the seats that would have gone towards Asians are going towards white legacy students. So essentially, they got y'all to remove affirmative action, having you guys believing that it will benefit you. In the end, because you found out that you actually benefit more from that than quote unquote black people, you ended up being hit, your numbers dropped, right? But even though they removed affirmative action, they kept the whole legacy admission thing, so white folks were still benefiting, and all of the seats that would have gone towards affirmative action went towards white legacy students. A lot of the seats that would have gone towards Asians went towards white legacy students. And now what you saw is that after affirmative action was essentially, removed, you had a major boost in quote unquote white students and a drop in Asian students. But ironically, when it came to black folks remained the same. Which shouldn't be a surprise, because once again, black people were not the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action to begin with. Right? So obviously, if Asians were actually benefiting more from affirmative action than black folks, that means that affirmative action being knocked down would actually hit you harder. Will hit you harder. And on top of that, all of the extra seats that would have gone towards affirmative action will go towards the white legacy students. And also keep in mind that these white folks didn't want you to be there to begin with. Now, a lot of Asians were saying that, hey, these universities were specifically trying to stop a lot of Asians from taking over. Yes, these universities did not want y'all Asians taking over place. They did not. You're right. They did not want you over there. They really didn't, right? But see, y'all thought that it, quote unquote, it was affirmative action. No. Affirmative action was actually helping y'all because it actually forced them to actually, take a look at it actually forced them to quote unquote, take more looks at Asian applicants than they would have wanted to begin with. Now, while affirmative action, they can literally just put more weight on legacy students and just do it that way, and all the seats that would have gone towards affirmative action just go towards legacy white students. And because black folks, ironically, were actually receiving less affirmative action compared to Asians, because once again, Asian is a very broad term. Asian includes lower income Asians too. And so because black folks were benefiting less from affirmative action compared to Asians, they were not as affected, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that the same way Asian Americans go in at affirmative action because they thought, oh, we're gonna stick it to the blacks. We go out here and quote unquote align with whiteness and be white adjacent. The same way all that shit backfired, and how white folks say, oh, thank you for your support, thank you for affirmative action, right? Thank you so much, but we gonna keep legacy emissions. We gonna cool. Yes, affirmative action is gone, but that also means a lot of them Asians who are getting into affirmative action can be gone too, right? So your numbers are going to take a hit, and all of the extra seats that would have gone towards affirmative action, we're not gonna give those seats to Asians. No. We're gonna give them to the white legacy students, right? Which will just further drop your numbers. And a lot of seats that would have gone towards Asians, we're going to give it to white legacy students too, because we didn't want y'all to be here anyway, because y'all were too much of a threat. Right? Affirmative action forced us to even take a look at your application. Now we don't got to. Now we can simply take all the seats that would have gone towards affirmative action and give it to white legacy students. And a lot of seats that would have gone towards Asians and give it to white legacy students, and just and through that method essentially boost the white applicants or sort of white numbers and essentially destroy and really hit the Asian numbers. Now, when it comes to the blacks and the other groups, they don't really care because black people are underrepresented anyway. A lot of them other groups are not really a threat to the white folks anyway. Right? The only group that was really a threat to quote unquote white legacy students, the only group that was really a threat to quote unquote the quote unquote white students in the Ivy League school were Asian, because they were coming in there with just all these great test scores. So now that you Asians have essentially helped us undermine y'all and sort of really suppress your numbers, okay, you're not a threat no more. As much no more. And when it comes to them blacks and them Hispanics and other groups, well, them groups are underrepresented anyway, so they're not a threat either, so we're not too worried about that. That's what happened. And now the Asians are crying online, oh my God. And it's so funny how now all of a sudden them Asians want to admit that, oh, actually, the quote unquote black folks are right, but it doesn't matter. Because there's no sympathy now. In fact, a lot of the Asian Americans try to go out here and say, oh my God, there's been a drop in Asian applicants, but nobody cared. And what's so funny is that all of them white folks that were gassing y'all up, supporting y'all, giving y'all money, now that they are seeing that, hey, the overturning of affirmative action has led to an increase in white students and a drop in a lot of Asian students in Ivy League schools, they're cool with that. Yeah, it was cool. All of a sudden now that the number of Asian students have dropped, all of a sudden now, all them white folks they're gone now. They're not calling you no more. They're not giving you money no more. It's sad. It's sad. And now them Asians looking a fool, right? And of course, I guess they haven't learned a lesson because a lot of them are going out here for Trump. So what I'm saying is that the same way the Asian Americans got played and used when it came to affirmative action, right? That's going to happen when it comes to Trump. Is that a lot of them folks who voted for Trump, people of color, voted for Trump because they were trying to chase aspirational whiteness the same way Asians were chasing aspirational whiteness when they went after affirmative action, right? In the end, what's going to happen is the white folks going to say thank you so much, but they're gonna go out here and put policy that specifically are going to center around their people, and all of them people of color groups that were chasing aspirational whites, they're gonna be hit. Trust and believe. When Trump gets into power and he starts focusing on the white working class, on rolling back woke, on mass deportation, on rolling back diversity programs, on quote unquote the China virus, the quote unquote China and the China threat. Sorry, y'all. I'm sorry I said the China virus, right? Because the China virus is what Trump called COVID, but COVID is gone now, right? But the point is, when Trump gets into office and he starts focusing on the sort of white working class, rolling back woke, rolling back DI, rolling back diversity and programs, fighting against China, fighting against the China threat, all of that stuff, right? Mass deportation, all that stuff. Them people of color groups are going to be hurt. Now, of course, black people are going to be hurt too, but see, black folks, we didn't chase aspirational whiteness, right? And see, that also brings an point to that. The reason why black people, in my opinion, do not chase aspirational whiteness because we literally cannot. Because we are the antithesis to whiteness, we don't even have that option. It's whiteness, blackness, everyone in the middle. But so everybody else in the middle, all these other people of color groups, right? They have the ability to at least chase aspirational whiteness. Now, will they achieve it? No, but they can at least chase it. In fact, the most they'll be able to achieve is being a quote unquote white adjacent. It's being a buffer class of whiteness. That's it. That's the most they can achieve. But even then, that only goes so far. But when it comes to black folks, we don't have the option of quote-unquote being white adjacent. We don't have the option of quote-unquote being a buffer class of whites the same way these people of color groups do. Because we are the antithesis to whiteness, we can never, ever, ever chase aspirational whiteness, even if we wanted to. So that sort of shields us in a way because, okay, if you know that whiteness or quote-unquote white adjacenthood or quote-unquote being a buffer class of whiteness, right? If you know that all of those things, right, chasing aspirational whiteness, being a buffer class of whiteness, being white adjacent, if all of those things are not available to you because as a black person you are the antithesis to whiteness, then it makes it easier for you to focus on yourself. I will say that has actually been a benefit of black folks, that because black people, are the antithesis to because black people are the antithesis to whiteness, and it is impossible for us to be white adjacent, to be a buffer class, to whiteness, to essentially chase quote unquote white validation, to essentially chase whiteness, right? Because those things are just not available to us, right? Then that means that it makes it that much more easier for us to focus on ourselves, right? That's why black people don't have those problems. But when it comes to all of these other groups, because that's an option for them, they're gonna chase whiteness. Now, will they be white? No. Will they be able to tap into white privilege? No. The best they'll be able to be is be a buffer class of whiteness or quote unquote white adjacenthood. That's it. Right. So these people of color groups have the ability to essentially chase aspirational whiteness. That's it. They have the ability to do that, right? But of course, that will only take them so far, right? And even if they are able to get, white adjacenthood, being a buffer class of whiteness, at the end they're not white. At the end of the day, eventually that stuff will be taken away too. Okay? So my whole thing is that when you then look at the overall situation of how these quote unquote people of color groups voted, no, you shouldn't be surprised, right? They chased aspirational whiteness, and it's going to backfire. And hell, it's already backfired, right? You already have Hispanics, Latinos regretting the vote for Trump because Trump is saying that he's really serious about quote unquote mass deportation. I'm like, literally, I literally just saw a video in which Trump is like openly talking about how he's going to talk. Hey, we gotta visit birthright citizenship. It's just like they're really going for it. So yeah, these people of color groups, chase aspirational whiteness, and it's going to backfire. Hell, it's already backfiring. And the same way, those Asians, right, when they try to sort of chase aspirational whiteness by going after affirmative action and all of that backfire in the face, all them people groups, right, in their attempt to chase aspirational whiteness by voting for Trump, all of that is going to backfire on them, and it's already backfiring on them, right? So that's about it. And so, all of that really covers, in my opinion, why black women have such a visceral reaction, specifically to Trump's win, but I will say specifically to how white women and people, because look, if you look at black women's reaction, right? Yes, it was anger over Trump winning, but a lot of it was really about how they saw how specific certain specific demographics like white women and people of color went out there and voted for Trump. That was really, I think, the source of the anger and the anguish sort of behind black women sort of, just sort of, angry reaction, right? The pain, the sorrow, the anger behind their reaction of Trump winning the election, right? A lot of it had more to do about the specific demographics like white women and people of color voting for Trump than it did Trump actually winning, right? And I have just, spent my time breaking down, of course, why I believe, these two groups, voted the way they did, right? Now, what I'm going to do is focus on, specifically white voters and, their vote for Donald Trump. Look, white folks, white maggots. Let's be honest here, right? We know that you voted, for aspirational whiteness. Sorry. You actually voted for whiteness. It was the people of color groups that voted for aspirational whiteness, right? You voted for whiteness, right? To sort of, what you believe as maintaining white privilege, what you guys believe as taking back the country for white folks. We know, right? We know that's what it really was. Now, did the economy, did the migration, all that stuff play a role? Yes, but I know for a lot of these white folks who voted for Trump, a lot of it was whiteness. That's what it was, right? Not aspirational whiteness because they're actually white and they're trying to maintain, white privilege, white dominance, white power. Now, the people of color voted for aspirational whiteness, but when it comes to a lot of these white voters, they voted for whiteness to preserve whiteness, to quote-unquote take their country back in the name of whiteness, right? Let me tell y'all something. Trump is not going to save y'all, okay? Because I already know that for a lot of you guys, right, what you guys are expecting Trump to do is come here and fix the immigration issue and fix the economic issues in a way that is going to empower white folks. We know that because we know that you guys don't really care about black folks or all these people of color groups. It's really about how you guys view white people and white status being a threat, and you view the economy and migration as sort of being symbolisms of whiteness being a threat, and so y'all hope that Trump will be able to fix those issues and by default then be able to save whiteness from the crisis in. But let me tell you something, okay? That's not gonna happen. Number one, when it comes to immigration, I already know that the only reason y'all have a problem with immigration is because a lot of the immigration is really from non-white folks. See, because look, I will say for the vast majority of America's history, most of the immigrants that came to this country are from Europe. Y'all didn't have a problem with immigration like that when it was mostly white folks. It's only when immigration starts to shift more and more towards non-white people then it becomes a problem. And I know that the reason y'all concerned about that is because, hey, because white folks in America are having declining white birth rates, right? The fact that y'all are seeing your birth rates decline and you're seeing all these non-white folks coming through, you guys are viewing that as a demographic threat, right? But here's the thing. Trump is not going to save y'all from that. Okay? Because here's a fundamental reality. Capitalism and the sort of, post-industrial slash, capitalism and the post-industrial environment is literally what's causing the suppression of your birth rate. Because, obviously in a sort of, urban slash, industrial slash post-industrial environment, it costs more to raise kids, so people don't have it. That's what it is. So as long as you live in this, industrial slash post-industrial capitalist economic model, your birth rates will keep on declining because the sort of environment of post-industrial capitalism, is very hostile towards having children, right? So as long as you're under this economic model, that them birth rates are going to keep dropping. And as long as those birth rates keep dropping, people are going to continue to be allowed to come here both legally and illegally, right, in order to help offset your declining white birth rates. Because look, the reason why so many folks are being allowed to come here, specifically non-white people, right? The reason you have so many, folks allowed to immigrate here, specifically folks who are non-white, a lot of it has to do with the fact that, hey, since we have a declining birth rate, specifically amongst white people, right? This is a problem for both states' interests and business interests. Because once again, the state needs a strong population because they need a strong tax base, and they need a strong labor force and people who can work within the government, people who can be in the military. And of course, when it comes to business interests, lower birth rates is bad for them because, hey, they need a consumer force. They also need a labor force, right? All that stuff. So because it is in both states' interest and business interest to import as many people, I guess to allow as many people to come here, both legal and legally, to offset the effects of declining birth rates, that's what's happening. And so that's what I'm saying is that as long as the white birth rates continue the way they're going, as long as these fertility rates are still declining, guess what? Both the state and the business class are going to see it in their interest to allow folks to keep coming here, right? Now, would they prefer for it to be white folks? Yes, but here's the issue. When you look at Europe, when you look at all these other white countries, right, white people are also having a fertility rate around the world. So there's not enough white folks to pull from. So if the state and the business class find it in their interest to sort of allow folks to come here to sort of offset the effects of a declining birth rate, they're going to have to predominantly really bring in non-white here because those are the only that populations that can really pull from like that because white folks are declining globally. Okay? So that's not going to stop on the Trump. Even if Trump decides to do a mass deportation, all that stuff, at the end of the day, as long as birth rates are there, as long as birth rates decline, it is going to be in both states' interests and business class interests to allow folks to come here, and they will continue to come. In fact, Donald Trump literally said that he wanted to put in place a policy in which folks who graduated from U.S. colleges will be instantly given a green card. That's what Trump said. Now, whether or not he'll follow through, we'll see. But see, that already tells you, hey, Trump can go out here, crack down immigration, do all that stuff. That's great. He can crack down immigration, do mass deportation. That's fine. But at the end of the day, as long as them birth rates keep declining, it is going to be in the state's interest and the business class interest to have folks come here to offset the to offset the effects of a declining birth rate. And because white people around the world are in demographic decline, the only folks who are really going to be able to to really bring in here are going to be non-white people. Which, yes, will accelerate the demographic change and will accelerate, white folks being a minority. it will accelerate that process. So that's not going to stop. So if you think that, you voting for Trump is somehow going to save whiteness in that way, nope, it's not going to stop because the factors that have led to sort of, the reason why all of the reason why Trump being elected is now really going to change that, because once again, like I have laid out, right, the core factors have not changed. As long as the core factors are still there, you are going to continue to still have folks, being able to come here. So all of this rhetoric about, Trump is going to save us, stop all that rhetoric. That's not going to happen, right? So let's make that very clear. So one, when it comes to white folks voting for Trump, Donald Trump is not going to save you when it comes to immigration, or just when it comes to whiteness, because once again, as long as them white birth rates are down, as long as them white birth rates are in decline, it is going to be in states' interest, business class interest, to allow folks to come here to offset the effects of declining birth rate. And because white people are a minority globally, that will mean that probably most of the folks being brought here are going to be non-white here, because those are the only people that they can really pull from. And yes, that will lead to a white minority. Yep. Let's not get it twisted. And Trump being in office, y'all putting Trump in office, and Trump being there is not going to stop. Trump is not going to change that. Trump is not going to be able to stop that. No change that, because that is beyond him, right? Those are factors that are outside of Trump's control, right? So that's number one. Number two, economics. A lot of y'all voted for Trump because y'all, felt like, hey, white people, speaking of white working class, you guys have lost your economic might. Look, Black Americans are used to being at the bottom economically. Black Americans are used to being economically deprived. But I think for a lot of white folks, now that they're starting to see, for a lot of white folks, now they're starting to see more and more white people really feeling economic pain, economic deprivation. They can't take it. So I know the second reason y'all voted for Trump was really about, really economic empowerment of white folks in this country. But here's the issue. That's not going to happen either. Because the reason why white people specifically are feeling like they're losing economic power, because what you're seeing is the center of the global economy is shifting from the West towards the East, towards Asia right now, right? And really what's going to happen is that by 2030 or beyond, right, China will become the biggest economy in the world, and most of the global economy is probably going to be in Asia. And so in a world where the United States and the West are no longer the sort of, center of the global economy, the sort of no longer this economic giant, yes, white folks are going to have to, quote unquote, take a lower standard of living. Yes, black people will be affected too, but here's the issue. Black people are used to being economically deprived. White folks are not, because they're used to always, no matter how bad things get, the sun will always save them. Now that the U.S. empire is coming to an end, now that, white Western global hegemony, white Western global empire is coming to an end, what you are going to see is that your standard of living, the standard of living and economic prosperity that white Americans were used in this country is going to go away. Because it was fundamentally based on these sort of, white folks exploiting and extracting the rest of the globe. So once the global economy fully shifts towards Asia, China becomes the biggest economy in the world, Asia becomes the center of the global economy, at that point, yes, the sort of white Western global hegemonic dominance will come to an end. And, this whole idea of America being the sort of, the sort of being the sort of biggest economy in the world, the most wealthiest, that's going to go away too. And white Americans are going to have to sort of experience what it means like, what it feels like when white supremacists dominate the globe, right? Because once again, because so much of white American standard of living and the prosperity was predicated on sort of, the U.S. empire and quote unquote white Western global hegemony extracting from the rest of the globe and sort of bringing it towards the West, and towards America, towards the West, specifically towards America, what that means is that Once the center of the global economy shifts towards Asia, China becomes the biggest economy, and fundamentally the West can no longer extract from the rest of the globe, then yes, white Americans are going to face, first of all, white people globally, but white Americans in particular, are going to face a massive drop in their wealth and prosperity. Because it was fundamentally based on the exploitation of the rest of the world. And Trump is not going to stop that. Now Trump, has come out threatening the BRICS, threatening, all of these, rising powers. But at the end of the day, that's not going to mean nothing, right? Him going at China, Russia, not really Russia, really going at the BRICS, right? That coalition, that's not going to mean anything. Okay? That's not going to mean anything. And just in case that wasn't enough for y'all, because I already know y'all hurt right now. I already know that me telling a lot of these white folks that, hey, voting for Trump is not going to save the white empire. That's over with, right? China will become the biggest economy in the world. China will become the sort of new center of the planet. The center of the global economy will be in Asia. Right? And the United States and the West will lose their dominance, will lose their economic prowess. And here in the West, specifically America, we will lose our standard of living, specifically white folks, because they've been accustomed to it so much. Black people, it won't matter to as much because black people have been used to sort of being at the bottom. White folks are the ones who are really going to get it because they're going to experience what does it feel like to live in a world. White America specifically, I guess white people in the West are going to experience what it feels like to live without all of the economic wealth and prosperity that was based and predicated on the exploitation of everybody else. And they're not going to like it. And that's going to happen regardless of what Trump does. So Trump is not going to stop that. And if that did not make you mad enough, after after the center of the global economy goes towards Asia and Asia becomes center of the global economy, what's going to happen is by 2100, Africa is going to become the center of the global economy. So in other words, not only is the center of the global economy going to move towards the West, towards Asia, right? Essentially, officially putting an end to white Western global hegemony, officially putting an end to the sort of, wealth and prosperity and sort of, first world lifestyle that quote unquote white people are used to in the West, because they can now no longer exploit the rest of the world. Not only not only does the center of the global economy towards Asia lead to that, right? Lead towards, the end of Western dominance and the end of, the quote unquote Western prosperity and lifestyle, right? But on top of that, later on in the future, we also see the center of the global economy also move towards Africa too. So really, for a lot of you white folks who are out here voting for Trump because you really thought that Trump was somehow going to, bring back the wealth, that's over. Okay, the U.S. empire is done, Western empire is done, the quote unquote white global empire is done. And so I'll just say it one more time for folks who don't get it. Okay, what's going to happen is that the center of the global economy is going to move. But really, what's going to happen is that really by 2030 and really by 2050, really, China would have become the biggest economy in the world. The center of the global economy would have moved towards Asia, officially marking an end to sort of white Western global hegemony and sort of white global power and white global Western hegemonic power. And with the end of white Western global hegemonic power, that would also mean the end of this quote unquote wealth and prosperity that white people are used to in the West. And that is something that they're going to have to deal with. Now, black Americans are used to being deprived, but white folks are not. So the end of the sort of the end of the white Western global hegemonic empire will lead to the end of the wealth and prosperity that white people have experienced in the West. Something that they will not be able to handle. right? Because all like black people who at least are used to being economically deprived, white people are not, and they will crash out, and literally they will go through a breakdown. And all of this is going to happen due to the center of the global economy going towards Asia. And to make white folks even more angry, right? After that, by 2100, you will then see the center of the global economy going from Asia towards Africa, and Africa being the center of the global economy. So just to recap, the center of the global economy will move from the West towards Asia, marking an end to the white global hegemonic empire, and marking an end to the wealth and prosperity in the West, which of course white people are not going to like. And then once Asia becomes the center of the global economy, right? They'll have that for a while. Then the center of the global economy will sort of move towards Africa, and Africa will then become the center of the global economy as well too, in that manner. So that's the future, right? And that's not going to be stopped, right? This whole idea of bringing back the good old days of bringing back the good old days of white folks being wealthy and first world life, that's over with. Okay, you need to accept the fact that the white global hegemonic Western empire is gone. The global economy is going to go towards Asia. Your lifestyle here in the West is going to end because the wealth and prosperity in the West is going to end because the West is no longer going to be the center of the global economy. And Asia, now being the center of the global economy, is going to dominate the planet. And then by 2100, the center of the global economy is the center of the global economy is going to go towards Africa, and Africa will rise, and Africa will go on to dominate the planet. That is what it is. Now, the various reasons for this, there's various reasons why it's happening. Right? A lot of it has to do with, the fact that, Africa, for example, is the only place that is growing demographically. Now, of course, Asia already went through the they already went through the demographic boom, and they were able to quote unquote cash in their demographic dividend, which is what really allowed them to facilitate this sort of economic move towards them. And the same is going to happen to Africa too. Their demographic dividend would also lead to them also dominating too. So in other words, the future of the globe is not white. It's not Western. The future of the globe is going to be dominated really by the Asian continent, right? So first going to be Asian, this is going to be Africa to make it even worse. Now, of course, capitalism is really what's driving this, because once again, as we all know, because the West, developed and they eventually reached the limits of growth. The only way they could continue the profits, they would have to continuously extract from the rest of the globe to sort of continue this sort of endless growth model. And of course, because Asian countries were going through demographic dividend, and there was more profits to be made, capitalism moved to Asia, which is what facilitated the center of the global economy going towards Asia, and why Asia is going to be center of the global economy probably by 2050, and also why the Western bloc in general is it will no longer be the center of the global economy, and white folks are going to lose the sort of wealth and prosperity within the West, and this will mark the end of the sort of white Western hegemonic empire, right? White Western hegemonic dominance and sort of empire over the globe. And of course, once Asia goes to its industrial cycle and fully develops, and Asia reaches the limits of growth, folks are going to look out for more profits. And because Africa is now the only place that's growing demographically, there's going to be profits being made. And so what's going to happen? The global economy is going to move towards Africa, because that's going to be where more profits get made. And eventually Africa is going to become the center of the global economy too. And they will also have power and dominance, that kind of stuff. So what I'm saying here to kind of, I guess, close on this topic, I've been sort of rambling a lot. What I'm saying to these white folks is that that era, that sort of 1950s era, is over with. In fact, the future is really is non-white. The future is that Asia, right, alongside China, is going to sort of dominate the planet, and then Africa is going to come right behind them, right? And I have no doubt that a lot of you white folks are crying right now because look, I personally believe that for a lot of white folks, they can tolerate the Asians, leading the planet, but I think for a lot of white folks, what they really fear and what they really can't take is the idea of quote unquote Africa, of black folks leading the planet. That's what, so I personally believe that a lot of the white folks who listen to this, you guys are probably more angry over the African century compared to the Asian century. To be honest with you, but to sort of wrap the topic, that's where we're going. So this whole idea of you thought that Trump this whole idea that you thought that Trump was going to bring back the 1950s, bring back, the era of white dominance, white economic, white prosperity, we gonna have the white mother, white father, white kids, too big a fence. That's what the future of the global economy, the future of power is really going to be the Asians and then the Africans, specifically black Africans. So really, the future of the global economy is really going to be Asians and Africans, specifically black people. That's it. And so that's what's and that's what you're gonna realize, that's going to happen regardless of what Trump does, right? So the immigration shit is not going to stop because the factors that are driving folks coming here are way beyond Trump's control. So all of that is going to keep happening regardless of what Trump does, right? That will persist. Even if he does a deportation, that will persist because the factors behind folks, coming here is beyond his control. And when it comes to economics, look, the future of the global economy is going to be Asian Africa. And there's none stopping that. And Trump is not going to be able to... There's nothing Trump will do to stop that. So all you got to do is sit down and accept the fact that the sort of 1950s white man, white woman, white kids, serving house, all that stuff, that's not coming back. It is what it is. So to all the white, Trump voters who voted for Trump because you quote unquote were trying to, save whiteness, reassert whiteness, claim back the country in the name of whiteness, all that's going to fail. Because at the end of the day, all the factors that are leading to sort of the decline of whiteness, the decline of white power, the decline of white dominance on the global stage, those factors are beyond Trump's control. And those factors will persist in spite of Trump. Meaning that the end of whiteness, the end of white dominance, the end of quote unquote white people being on top, that's going to happen regardless of what Trump does. So I just hope that so I just want to let y'all know that despite what you voted for, despite you guys going out here and voted for Trump in order to save whiteness, save whiteness, claim back the country with whiteness, that's not going to happen. Okay? And I know that the reason why y'all specifically focus on the economics and immigration thing is really from a racial lens, from the point of view of how it affects white folks. I already know this. I know that when it comes to people of color, they just do it just racially neutral. But when they focus on those issues, even though a lot of them voted for Trump because they were chasing aspirational whiteness. But I know when it comes to a lot of you white folks, it's really from a racial lens. And I'm trying to tell you that when it comes to those issues, okay, and how you view those issues as being symbols of white decline, Trump, in other words, Trump is not going to stop the white decline, both in America and globally. White decline economically, white decline white decline economically, white decline demographically, white decline any way you want to ship for. What I'm saying here is that white people's global decline is going to happen irregardless. And their decline is going to be all areas: economic, military, demographic, all areas. And that's going to happen irregardless of Trump being in office. Right? And so that's the hard pill that these quote unquote white Trump supporters need to swallow. That white decline, is going to happen globally, right? In all areas: economic, demographic, military, in all areas, in spite of Trump winning. That's the pill you need to swallow, right? White declines here to stay. It is what it is. It's beyond Trump's control. So, with that being said, I'll just say this then. When it comes to them white Trump supporters, the only thing you can really do is accept that white people's decline globally, economically, militarily, demographic, right? All areas, white people's decline globally, in all areas is inevitable. And it's going to happen irregardless. And you putting your trust in one white man called Trump to sort of reverse that is foolish. And he's not going to be able to stop it. He's not going to reverse it. And the global white decline in all areas will happen irregardless. And you're going to have to accept it. Okay? To all you white MAGA Trump voters. Now, this brings me to, I think, my final topic, which is going to be the black Republicans. I wanted to quickly touch on this because there was an article that came out in which black Republicans were sort of mad about the fact that Donald Trump essentially had an all-white cabinet. And I think the only black person he chose for a role, I think, was HUD. And I'm thinking to myself, of course. I don't understand, and by the way, guys, I was a former Republican. I came from the right wing. I came from the GOP, so I would know. But I don't fundamentally understand why, specifically, black Republicans are this naive. You know very well that the Republican Party runs on a white identity platform. You know this, right? Now, we know that Democrats, of course, we know that both Democrats and Republicans are pro-white. It's just that, Democrats need the black vote, Republicans do not. So that fundamentally alters how they deal with two groups. So because Democrats need your vote, they're willing to at least give you some things here or there. When it comes to Republicans, they don't need your vote. They are white voters, right? Now, they definitely support you voting for them, but they make it very clear what the priority is. Okay? So my thing is, what did you think it was? They run on the white identity platform. Their core base is white people. Of course, they were going to put an all-white cabinet. Okay? And yes, even though the Democratic Party is also, I guess you could say, also aligns when it comes to whiteness, because Democrats don't have the majority of white voters, they have to rely on minority voters, which means they at least have to give at least something. So even though both sides, fundamentally still serve whiteness, you at least have more leverage on Democratic side because they at least still need your vote. Unlike the Republican side, which don't, right? So obviously you're not going to get maybe everything you want, but you'll at least be able to get something. I've always said that's sort of the position. That's sort of, I think, where black folks are. Where, look, you got two parties, both of them are very much aligned with whiteness, but the difference is that one party has a majority of white voters, the other party relies on minority voters. And so the only party that you can really get anything out of is the one that relies on minority vote, which is Democrats. That doesn't mean that they don't like whiteness. It just means that because they have to allow a lot of minority voters, particularly black folks, they're more willing to give you things. That's it. Okay? But somehow you guys interpret that as saying, they love black people. Look, they probably don't give a fuck about black folks. Right? The Democrats probably don't care about people. But that doesn't matter. The point is that because they are in a situation where they need your vote, you can at least get some out of that. Compared to going to the other side, Republicans, where they don't even need your vote. They got an all white base. They don't need your vote. And they have no incentive to give you anything at all. Technically, white Democrats don't want to give you anything either, but they're forced to because once again they don't have the majority of white voters, so they have to roll on your vote. So they have to give you some. Republican side, they don't got to give you anything because they don't rely on your vote at all. So this whole idea that quote unquote black conservatives thought that Republican Party, this whole idea that the whole concept and idea that quote unquote black Republicans were shocked that Trump had essentially a mostly white cabinet. I'm like, you must be a fool. And based on what I recall, the only really non-white people in his cabinet were a lot of Indian. I know he had, I think, Marco Rubio there. Y'all can correct me wrong, but based on my understanding, Marco Rubio is also in that cabinet too. So maybe I guess you could count Marco Rubio as Latino. So to a certain because based on what I remember, Marco Rubio, because based on what I remember, Marco Rubio is also Cuban, I believe, right? So yeah. But outside of that, it's like, mostly white folks, some people of color here, like I think, like Marco Rubio, who's Cuban, and some Indians. That's about it. And of course, that sort of one black dude. Sorry, I think it's a black guy. Yeah, that one black dude I heard. That's it. So let's be honest here. Let's not be disingenuous and so sort of play games, right? It is what it is. Those are the choice you have. You got two parties that are both aligned with whiteness. One party gets a majority of white voters, and the other party essentially has to rely on minority voters, including black voters. So therefore, you're more likely to get stuff from the party that relies more on minority voters. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean that they don't like whiteness. It just means that because they rely on your vote, they're more willing to give you things. It doesn't mean they'll give you what you want, but they're gonna give you something, right? It is what it is. And even when it comes to the GOP, look, the GOP has made it very clear that they will do whatever it takes before they allow black folks in there. The Republican Party literally made a choice in which they would rather open their doors to the LGBT compared to allowing black folks in there. I mean, they've already demonstrated this time and time again. So my thing is that, the whole idea that a party, when you look at a party, the Republican Party, that has shown you that they are so hostile to black folks that when the Republican Party shows you, when the Republican Party shows you that they are so hostile to black people that they are literally willing to throw the conservative values over the bus and open the door to LGBT instead of open to black folks, it shows you what it is. When the Republican Party shows you that they are more willing to open the party to the LGBT compared to allowing black folks in there, right? That tells you how hostile they are towards black people. All of that showcases to you that, hey, the Republican Party is so hostile towards black people that they are willing to sacrifice their conservative views and open a door to the LGBT instead of allowing black folks to really enter that party. Okay? That's what it is. And so, hearing all these black Republicans, crying about, oh my God, there's no real black folks. And of course there isn't. That's what it is, right? And by the way, I'm not saying that the Democrats love black folks. What I'm saying is that there are realities on the ground. Right? You only got two options for real. One option doesn't need your vote and doesn't want your vote. Right? One option, the Republican Party, doesn't need your vote and doesn't want your vote. And hell, they've made it very clear that they're willing to sacrifice their values and allow the LGBT in there before they allow you in there. And the other party, which is, they also align with quote unquote whiteness, right? But even though the Democratic Party also aligns with whiteness, because they don't get the majority of white voters, they at least have to rely on minority voters, which includes black voters. So you at least can leverage to get some out of that. It may not be what you want, but you can get something. And if you got a choice between one side giving you some, another side giving you none, the choice is clear. Now, can you make the argument that the quote unquote something you're getting from Democrats not enough? Yes, but at the end of the day, that's better than nothing. So that's really the choice you have. So at the end of the day, I am just surprised and just shocked that black Republicans are surprised that Trump has a mostly white cabinet, and that essentially the only black role he had in his cabinet was for HUD, and the only other non-white people were essentially folks who were not black. They were either, I think, Latino, which is Marco Rubio, and Indian. So let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. So, I always love to see when black folks get the wake up call, but it's like, dude, how can you be a black Republican who's been in the party for that many years? You've been serving for so long. But somehow in 2024, you somehow surprised about Trump having an almost all-white cabinet. Like some of these black Republicans, the cooning is off the chains. Because that's how bad it has to be, right? That's how bad it has to be. But yeah, but just to kind of close off on this topic, and I will say even close on the video. Look, black Republicans, at the end of the day, you may agree with conservative values, that kind of stuff, but you are dealing in a situation in which the Republican Party fundamentally, because they get the majority of white voters, they don't need your vote nor want your vote. And they would rather open the door to LGBT compared to allow black folks in there. That's how hostile they are towards black folks. So if you really want to get your voice heard, the only place you can really go to as a black person is the Democratic Party. Yes, the Democratic Party very much yes, the Democratic Party believes in whiteness and supports whiteness and supports the white power structure, just like the Republican Party. But the difference is that because the Democratic Party does not get the majority of white voters, they have to rely on minority voters, including black voters, which means that you can leverage that to get something at least from the Democratic Party. It may not be what you want, it may not be enough, it may be little, but it's something instead of nothing. Right? And at the end of the day, unless somehow black folks overthrow this system, as long as you're living in this country, those are the choices you have. And so you are better off aligning with the side that is willing to at least give you something, instead of aligning with the side that literally is going to give you nothing. And so I hope that black Republicans, listen to what I'm saying, get, take this lesson, right? And really digest it, right? Really digest what I just said, so that next time you want to be crying and making articles because, quote unquote, a Republican president, aka Donald Trump, has an all-white cabinet. Because you should have known. You should have known better, right? It is what it is. But I'll just go ahead and leave it there, y'all. That should about, almost 2 hours. I've never really recorded a video this long before, but I had a lot of topics I wanted to really touch on, and I'm happy I was able to touch on that. Oh, and one more thing is that another thing I'm also tired of is all of these black men who were tap dancing for Trump. Once again, all of y'all niggas who were tap dancing for Trump before the election, where you guys at now? Because we already know that Trump is not doing anything for black men. He's not, like Kamala Harris at least had a policy for y'all. She had a policy. He's doing nothing for y'all. But y'all still are going out here tapping for Trump. And now Trump is making it very clear, right? With his cabinet appointments, just the way he's like that. Black folks, black men are not even going to be a focus. So you had a choice. A lot of you black men who were tap dancing for Trump had a choice between Kamala Harris, despite her flaws, who at least had an official policy for you, and Trump, who had nothing for you, and you chose Trump. And now all of a sudden, all of you black male Trump supporters who were tap dancing for Trump are out here crying because all of a sudden you guys starting to realize, Trump has no intention to do so black. But of course he doesn't. Y'all were the fool. He told you what it was. That, he's essentially running on white identity politics. But you won't listen. So, just want to put out there for all you black men who are tap dancing for Trump, okay? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear the crying. I don't want to hear all of the quote-unquote remorse and regret about your quote-unquote Trump vote. Because you should have known better. This is what it is. But I'll just leave it there. I'll leave it there, right? Because when it comes to the black mentality of Trump, look, at the end of the day, if you're a black man who was out here tap dancing for Trump, voting for Trump, and now all of a sudden you have all this regret and remorse because now you see that Trump is really about pushing that quote unquote white identity, that quote unquote Trump is really about pushing that sort of white agenda. I don't want to hear it because you were told what it was. You won't listen. Right? So all of y'all who are now remorsing, all of you guys who are now regretting your vote for Trump, remorse or vote for Trump, all of the black men that were tap dancing for Trump, voting for Trump, right? And now all of a sudden you are regretting your vote for Trump. I don't want to hear. So if you were a black man who was out here tap dancing for Trump, who went out here and voted for Trump, and now you are regretting the decision because you are seeing that Trump is not doing nothing for y'all. He has no intention for black men. He has no intention for black folks. And he's 100% committed to whiteness, to the white agenda. And now all of a sudden you angry about it. I don't want to hear it because you were told. Right? That's what it is. But with that being said, I'll leave it there. Y'all tell me what you guys think, right? Anything else I want to say before I close off? Nothing else really comes to mind. But yeah, I'll just say one last time. Look, one last time for folks in the back who didn't hear. If you're a black man who was tap dancing for Trump and who went and voted for Trump, and now you are regretting your vote, you are sort of being remorseful, regretting your vote because now you see that Trump has no intention of supporting black men or black voters and has every intention of quote unquote pushing whiteness, pushing a white agenda. I don't want to hear it. I don't care because you were told what it was. You were told that this guy was running on white identity politics, but you won't listen. And now all of a sudden you want all of us to quote unquote feel sympathy. We have no sympathy for you specific black men who did that, and even black women who did that. No sympathy for y'all, right? My only hope is that black folks, after seeing 4 years of Trump, doubling down on whiteness, pushing the white agenda, pushing white identity politics, that they will get the wake-up call by the next presidential election, which should be 2028. Okay? That's my only hope. And so with that being said, I will officially close the video now, right? So with that being said, y'all make sure to like, share, subscribe, hammer out.